What if your child suddenly gets possessed by a powerful devil? What will you do? In Tropea, Italy, in the year 1987, Father Gabriele Amorth, chief exorcist of the Vatican, is called to a village where a man is said to be possessed by a devil. According to the local priest, the man is showing classical signs of possession, such as speaking English despite not having spoken that language ever before. At this time, the possessed man sees him and brags that he is Satan. This makes Amorth doubt the whole possession claim, so he just sits down and starts talking to the man. He asks the supposed Satan what is his name and to describe hell, but the man is avoiding his questions by threatening his life. Because of that, Amorth shows him the St. Benedict medal and sees nothing in the man's eyes. He then starts taunting his capabilities until Amorth tricks the devil into possessing a pig to flex his power. Just then, a villager shoots the pig dead. After that, he calms the man down and declares that the devil is gone. A few weeks later, over in Castile, Spain, Julia and her two children, Amy and Henry, arrive at an old Spanish abbey called San Sebastian Abbey, which is her late husband's sole inheritance after his sudden death about a year ago. However, the rebellious Amy is not happy about them moving to Spain, while Henry, on the other hand, has no say in this because he literally doesn't talk ever since his father died. As they enter the abbey, Julia comments that it's not so bad, but Amy sarcastically says that it is cozy. With that, the two kids start looking for their rooms while Julia is introduced to Father Esquibel by the foreman. The priest says that he's actually waiting for them to personally welcome the family to the diocese. In turn, Julia thanks him and assures him that they are being careful in preserving the original structure of the abbey with respect both to his husband's family name and the church. Shortly after, Amy is brushing her teeth when she hears somebody knocking. At first, she doesn't mind it, but it happens again, so she tells her brother to stop it and leave her room. Yet, there goes the knocking again, so Amy finally knocks back. Strangely, Henry is already walking around the house when it happens, so it isn't him that knocked the third time. Speaking of whom, the boy reaches the basement and starts hearing creepy noises. Then, his attention turns to a hole in the wall where he sees what seems to be a seal that is starting to crack. Upstairs, Julia is looking for Henry, so she asks Amy, but she's still upset with her. At this time, Julia explains that they're currently broke and that the abbey is their only property left. Yet, she promises that once the reconstruction of the abbey is finished, they will sell it and they will go back to America. Until then, Julia asks for Amy's help with her younger brother, especially in trying to make him talk. Meanwhile, in Rome, Italy, Amorth gets in trouble for what he did a month ago back in Tropea. Facing the church tribunal, Cardinal Sullivan is not happy with Amorth's action, which happened to not have any permission from his superior. Just then, Amorth reveals that what he did back then wasn't an exorcism because the man was not possessed at all, but is actually mentally ill. According to him, most of the people asking for his help, who are claiming that they are being possessed, are mentally disturbed. So instead of acting as an exorcist, he is rather being a priest and talks to these people until they get their heads straight enough for him to recommend them to specialists. Bishop Lumumba then backs the claim of Amorth, stating that 98% of the people he helped were, later on, recommended to doctors and psychiatrists. In turn, Sullivan asks about the remaining 2%, to which Amorth states that those are the real deal, referring to the true evil, which is something that science will never get to explain. Unexpectedly, Sullivan grins at his statement. Noticing it, Amorth tells the tribunal to get straight to the point, saying that he once fought a war so he knows what a firing squad looks like. At this time, Sullivan reveals that the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has recommended that the position of the chief exorcist be formally vacated. He also adds that the church is in constant pressure to keep their relevance, and one way to do it is to move past the outdated beliefs, such as possession and exorcism. Hearing this, Amorth asks what then is the role of the church if they themselves don't believe in the existence of evil. He then jokingly remarks that the congregation must want all of them out of their job. With that, Amorth is about to leave, but Sullivan insists that they're not yet done. Because of that, he frankly asks them if this is about a dead woman named Rosaria Valandes, who he wrote about in a magazine, which shocks the tribunal. Agitated, Sullivan warns him to stand down and show respect to his superior. In turn, Amorth tells them that if they have a problem with him, they must go directly to his actual superior, the Pope. And just like that, Amorth turns his back on the tribunal with disgust, leaving them hanging with their nonsensical questions and suggestions. The following day, back in Castile, two construction workers are in the basement, talking about how creepy the place is. Shortly after, one of them notices the hole and tries to reach what's on the other side of the wall. As he fails, the other one lights up a flare to see what's behind it. Then all of a sudden, it sparks a large fire that burns the two construction workers, causing the foreman to pull out his team from the job because of how dangerous the place is. At the same time, Henry starts convulsing, so Amy worriedly calls out for their mother. Henry only stops convulsing when Julia calls his name. But to their surprise, he suddenly speaks after a year of being quiet, declaring that they're all going to die. Just then, Henry violently scratches his face, scaring Julia and Amy. Because of that, they immediately took him to the hospital. However, the doctor says that there's nothing wrong with Henry based on all of the tests that they have done. As expected, Julia cannot believe it after what she just saw. In turn, the doctor asks if Henry has been in any trauma recently, to which she tells him about his father. The doctor asks next how Henry responded. When Julia says that he hasn't spoken since then, until recently, the doctor notes that it could be psychosis. With that, the doctor leaves in a hurry and only gives Julia some sedatives she can use if ever Henry tries to hurt himself again. Later that night, the power in the abbey suddenly gets cut and Amy finds out that somebody shuts it down. Meanwhile, Henry grabs Julia's chest, demanding that she breastfeed him. Pushing her away, he rolls up his shirt and reveals cuts in his body that write hate. And to their horror, his voice starts to change as he orders them to bring in the priest. Because of that, Julia calls Esquibel so he can take a look at Henry. But just as he steps inside the boys' room, he is thrown away while Henry is screaming that they got the wrong priest. The next day, Amorth visits the Pope as he is said to be ill. But the Pope denies it and states that it's just what the others wanted. Then, he jokingly says that they must have done their jobs too right, that the younger generations like Sullivan don't believe in the existence of evil anymore the way that the old generations understand it. 200 fallen angels were expelled from heaven and were driven beneath to the soil where God is not welcomed. He states that for the younger ones, this is an idea, but for the old ones, it is very real. Just then, the Pope tells Amorth about the boy in Castile, Spain, that is said to be possessed by a devil, referring to Henry. Strangely, something about it disturbs the Pope greatly, so he wants Amorth to take the case. The Pope explains that the incident took place in San Sebastian Abbey, a place that had given the church huge problems before. According to him, he is sensing a great evil in the place that only Amorth can deal with. With that, Amorth reviews the files about Henry and San Sebastian Abbey. Later on, reading the text, "Our sins will seek us out," in the end. Father Amorth then heads to Spain immediately to meet Henry and the family. But upon arriving at the abbey, a well in the garden catches his attention. Not long after, he is approached by Esquibel, and as soon as Amorth introduces himself, Esquibel says that he read all the articles that he wrote. Amorth then remarks that his books are good too, so he should read them as well. Shortly, Esquibel introduces Amorth to Julia and Amy. At this time, Julia asks why the church is sending priests and why they are interested in her son's case. In turn, Amorth states that he's only here to check on Henry and suggest how to help him, but the final say will still be on her. Amy then points out that it's worth the shot, so Julia tells the priest where Henry is. Seeing the boy in person for the first time, Amorth finds him sleeping, so he begins praying. Just then, Henry wakes up and says that prayers are worthless in this place. Quietly, Amorth shows the San Sebastian medal to Henry and sees the eyes of the devil himself. With that, he asks for the name of the devil and why he possesses Henry. The devil responds that he is Amorth's nightmare and that he likes to ruin the flesh of an innocent child. But to the priest's confusion, the devil remarks that he wants the challenge of an exorcist's soul as well, insisting that it's here for Amorth. As it speaks Amorth's name, the devil says that it knows his nightmares and sins too. In a flashback, Amorth was in the war against the Germans as part of a partisan group when they suddenly got ambushed. Henry then vomits a bird that seems to be somehow familiar to Amorth. Going outside of the boys' room, he tells Esquibel that they're facing a powerful devil. According to Amorth, the more the devil knows, the higher it is in their hierarchy. Afterward, he tells Julia that her son is under the influence of a very powerful devil, so removing him from the abbey will put Henry's life in danger. In that sense, Amorth asks if Henry underwent some trauma, pointing out that traumas can be a gateway for the devil. It is then revealed that when her husband died in a car accident, Henry was with him and he saw his father impaled. At this time, Amorth tells Julia that she needs to keep her faith because a mother's love is the closest thing to God's love. Meanwhile, Amy hears the knocking sound again, so he goes to check on Henry. But to her horror, her brother creepily says that he's in hell, causing her to run back to her room. Suddenly, the phone rings and things get creepier as she hears her father talking on the other line, saying that they're all going to die. Freaked out, Amy runs to her mom and tells her what her father said. Hearing this, Amorth states that they should get some rest while he and Esquibel deal with the devil. Shortly, Amorth tells Esquibel that Henry won't last long with the devil in his body, so they need to figure out its name so they can finally exorcise it. But before going in, Esquibel confesses his sins to Amorth first, saying that it's been 8 months since his last confession. With that, the two priests go inside the room to make the devil admit its name. However, while they're praying, the power suddenly shuts off and Amorth sees Rosaria in front of him, threatening that his sins will seek him out. In turn, Amorth declares that his sins were already forgiven by the Lord, but Rosaria points out that he's the one who cannot forgive himself. Afterward, the devil taunts Esquibel about his secret affair with a woman named Adela. Triggered, Esquibel attacks Henry and Amorth quickly stops him, stating that it's exactly what the devil wants. Before the priests leave, the devil tells Amorth that he just took the bait and that the Holy Church will crumble from the inside. Outside, Esquibel confesses to Amorth about Adela, saying that she was the love of his life. But she wanted him to choose her over being a priest and cannot do it. So he lied to her because his love for God outweighed his love for Adela. With that, Amorth blesses him and assures him that God will forgive him. In turn, Esquibel asks about Rosaria, to which Amorth simply says that she was the girl that he should have helped before. According to Amorth, the devil inside Henry is strong enough to sense their guilt and use it against them as a distraction. At this time, he remembers the devil's words about him taking the bait. Just then, he realizes that the devil is scheming something bigger than what it appears to be. With that, he orders Esquibel to stay outside Henry's room while he goes to check the well in the garden. There, Amorth is shocked upon seeing the seal of the Vatican on the lid of the well. Opening it, he discovers that the well is built with several corpses with a gas deposit and another seal at the bottom. Meanwhile, inside the abbey, Esquibel, Julia, and Amy are all attacked by the devil. When Amorth comes back, he finds Esquibel bleeding from Henry's bite. Then, they hear the women screaming, so Amorth helps Julia while Esquibel rescues Amy. Afterward, they take the ladies into the chapel where they can rest easily. Shortly, Amorth goes back to the well with Esquibel to show him what he found. And to his surprise, there's the seal of the Spanish Inquisition, which is the darkest time in the history of the church. As it turns out, the corpses on the well are the people who refuse to be converted. With that, Amorth believes that there's still more hidden beneath them, so they go to the basement where they find the hole in the wall. There, another Vatican seal is embedded, the one that Henry saw before. The two priests force it open, and it leads them to a catacomb where the corpse of the last cardinal protector is caged in the middle. Amorth then reveals that the cage is not his prison, but is actually protecting him from the devil that he was trying to exorcise. Going further, Amorth searches the corpse for a key, and they manage to open a locked gate, leading to what seems to be a throne room. While all of this is happening, the Pope finally figures out what devil Amorth is dealing with, causing him to have a hard time breathing and be taken to the hospital. At the same time, Julia wakes up and finds that Amy is missing. Preparing for the worst, she takes the sedatives and heads to Henry's room, where she discovers that the devil is controlling Amy as well. Going back to the two priests, they see another corpse, and Amorth recognizes him as Friar Dio Jada, one of the greatest exorcists of all time. Opening his journal that has the seal of the Spanish Inquisition, Amorth and Esquibel discover that upon failing to exorcise a powerful devil in Segovia, it then possessed the exorcist and used his body to do all the horrible things that happened during the Inquisition under the name of the god. Worse, the church covered it up and buried the truth, explaining why the devil told them that the truth will seek them out. They then find a world map where some places are marked red. Remembering the word in Revelations, Amorth realizes that San Sebastian Abbey is one of the 200 places on earth where God is not welcome. Finally, they figure out the name of the devil possessing Henry, which is Asmodeus, the king of hell. In turn, Esquibel remembers that the devil was looking for a certain priest back then, and it turned out to be Amorth. Because of that, they think Asmodeus wants to repeat the past by possessing another exorcist to bring the Vatican down and cause chaos in the world. But since they now know the name of the devil, they prepare to finally exorcist it out of Henry. Before that, Amorth wants to make his final confession about the thing he regretted the most. Back in 1942, during the ambush, everyone in his unit died, except for him. This left young Amorth wondering why God spared his life until he realized that he was meant to serve him and his people. But when it mattered the most, he failed. One day, Amorth is called by the family of Rosaria as she insisted that she was possessed. However, Amorth realized that she was mentally ill and not possessed. Due to his pride, he didn't help her because he's an exorcist and not a psychologist, hence it's not his job. Unfortunately, this backfired on him when he witnessed Rosaria take her own life, cursing Amorth for not believing her. At this time, Esquibel comforts him and blesses him so that God forgives him of his sins. With that, Amorth and Esquibel are now confident to face Asmodeus. They also asked for Julia's and Amy's help, telling them to keep on praying for Henry. However, Asmodeus is really powerful, and it shows the two priests, Rosaria and Adela, the two women that they failed. Yet, they overcome it and get back into exorcising the king of hell. Then, all of a sudden, the devil stops fighting, as if Henry's dying already. And to their horror, Asmodeus turns out to completely possess Amy as well. She then attacks Julia, while Henry gets back up and hangs Esquibel into the air. Knowing that there's only one way to save everyone, Amorth finally offers himself to Asmodeus in exchange for their safety. In turn, the king of hell gladly takes his offer and lets go of the children to possess him. Meanwhile, the Pope suddenly gets awakened, feeling that something happened to Amorth. At the same time, the devil also makes his presence known to Sullivan by making the figure of Christ bleed inside the church. After a while, what's left of Amorth orders Esquibel to get the family out of the abbey. Then, he tries to take himself out, but the devil won't let him. It then takes him into the throne room where he sees Holy Mother Mary turns into Rosaria. On the other hand, Esquibel decides to come back for Amorth and finds him sitting on the throne. He tries calling out for him, but Asmodeus taunts him that Amorth is already gone. But Esquibel's faith in God and Amorth is strong, so he starts exorcising Asmodeus out of the priest. Slowly, Amorth starts coming back and they pray together until Asmodeus leaves his body. However, it manifests through Rosaria and Adela, so the two priests have to fight them and put them in peace once and for all. In the end, through their unbending faith, Amorth and Esquibel defeat Asmodeus. The next day, Amorth and Esquibel go to the Vatican where the Pope welcomes and commends them for a job well done. He then tells Amorth that the congregation wants a full report of what happened in Spain. Hearing this, Amorth remarks that Sullivan will just say that he's imagining things. But the Pope states that Sullivan is taking a sabbatical journey in Guam, so he doesn't have to worry about the congregation. In addition to that, Bishop Lumumba takes his place, so he will surely support Amorth in every way. The movie ends with Lumumba taking them to special church archives where they have been studying and finding the 199 other unholy places where God is not welcome, assigning Amorth and Esquibel to exorcise them. The Pope's Exorcist has brilliantly incorporated classic exorcism tropes and historical events such as the Spanish Inquisition. In fact, the movie used it very well to make a really good plot, separating this movie from other exorcism movies. Overall, The Pope's Exorcist is pretty good and fun to watch, which is also friendly to those who want to watch a horror film but hate jump scares.